All right, let's talk about Snowflake security. But I want you to forget about checklists and settings for a minute. Instead, I want you to think of yourself as an architect. Because today, we're not just configuring an account, we are building a data fortress, piece by piece, layer by protective layer, to keep your data completely safe.
So, here's our blueprint. We're going to start at the very bottom with the foundation, users and roles. Then we'll move on to granting power with privileges. After that, we'll secure the front door with strong authentication, and then build the walls using policies. Finally, we'll establish the golden rules for how to operate and build a watchtower for governance. See, we're building this thing from the ground up, just like a real fortress.
You know, every solid structure has to start with a rock-solid foundation. And in the world of Snowflake security, that foundation is all about defining who gets to come inside and what their job is once they're there. This is, without a doubt, the most important first step.
Now, the entire security model in Snowflake is built on this really elegant idea called role-based access control, or RBAC. And honestly, it's a genius concept. Think about it. Instead of trying to manage permissions for every single person, which would be a nightmare, you grant permissions to a role, like data analyst or marketing manager. Then you just assign people to those roles. It makes everything so much easier to manage, especially when you've got hundreds or thousands of users. It just scales. Snowflake actually gets you started with a few really powerful roles right out of the box. Sticking with our fortress analogy, think of the SYS admin as the architect, the one who actually builds things like databases and warehouses. The security admin is your head of security, managing who gets which keys. And the user admin, that's the gatekeeper, controlling who can even have an account. And what's really important here is that none of these roles can do everything. It's a built-in separation of duties, which is just fantastic security practice.
Okay, this is where things get really cool and super efficient. Roles can be granted to other roles, creating a kind of family tree. So you could create a junior analyst role that can only read sales data. Then you can grant that entire role to a more senior BI manager role. Now, the manager automatically gets all the analyst permissions, plus any extra ones you give them. This inheritance model is a lifesaver. It means you're not constantly repeating yourself, which cuts down on mistakes and makes your whole setup way easier to understand. Okay, so we've defined all our roles, we know who's who in our fortress. But right now, they can't actually do anything. So how do we give them the power they need? Well, that's where privileges come in. It's time to start handing out the keys.
And how do we do that? It's actually super simple. You have two main commands, grant and revoke. You use grant to give a specific ability, like say the permission to select data from a table, to a role. And then if someone changes jobs or no longer needs that access, you just revoke it. It's this clean, precise way of controlling exactly who can do what.
And here's a quick but really important point on ownership. Basically, whoever creates something, like a new table, is its owner. And by default, the owner has all the keys for that object and can start handing them out to other roles. And don't worry, this isn't set in stone. You can always transfer ownership if you need to.
So we know who's supposed to be inside the fortress, and we know which keys they're holding. But how do we make sure that the person knocking at the gate is really who they say they are? That's authentication, and it's all about securing that main entrance.
Now, Snowflake gives you a few different ways to check someone's ID. You've got the classic username and password, of course, but you should absolutely always pair that with multi-factor authentication, or MFA. For bigger companies, though, the gold standard is single sign-on SSO, or federated authentication. These let you plug Snowflake right into your company's main identity system, like Okta or Azure AD, for a much more secure and seamless experience.
And to put that into perspective, this is what you'd typically see in a real-world company. The vast majority of people, maybe 70%, are logging in through SSO. It's just easier and safer. Then you'll have a smaller group using MFA directly. And that tiny little slice for password only, you want to keep that as small as humanly possible. It's usually just for very specific locked-down service accounts. Okay, the front door is locked down tight. But a fortress is more than just a strong door, right? It needs walls. And in Snowflake, our walls are called network policies. These are what control where someone can log in from, adding a whole new layer of geographic and network-level security. And with these policies, you can get super specific. You can create an IP whitelist, which means people can only connect from, say, your company's office network. You can also create a blacklist to block known bad IPs.
For ultimate security, you can even set up private endpoints that bypass the public internet entirely. Now here's the game changer. Even if a hacker steals someone's password, if they aren't trying to log in from an approved location, your walls will stop them cold.
So, we've built the foundation, we've secured the door, and the walls are up. The structure is there. But any good fortress needs a strategy, a set of rules for how to operate day to day. That's what best practices are all about. They ensure your security stays strong for the long haul.
If you only take one single thing away from our chat today, please let it be this: the principle of least privilege. It's so simple, yet so powerful. It just means you give every user the absolute bare minimum set of permissions they need to do their job, and not 1 ounce more. Why does this matter so much? Because if one of those accounts ever gets compromised, the damage is contained. The attacker can't do much because the account they took over just doesn't have that much power.
And beyond that golden rule, there are a few others to live by. We've already talked about separation of duties. Another big one is to always create custom rules for your specific needs. Don't just start adding permissions to the powerful system rules like sysadmin. Why? Because that's how you accidentally give someone way too much power. And finally, you have to get in the habit of doing regular checkups. Look at who has access to what and ask if they still need it. Security is never set it and forget it. All right, our fortress is built, the rules of engagement are clear. There's just one last piece we need to add: the watchtower. This is all about governance and monitoring. It's how you get a bird's eye view of everything, and I mean everything, that happens inside your account.
And thankfully, Snowflake gives you all the tools you need to build that watchtower. You can dive into the access history and query history to see a perfect audit trail of who touched what data and when they did it. It's also so important to remember that all of your data is automatically encrypted, both when it's sitting still and when it's moving across the network. These are the kinds of features that are absolutely essential for proving compliance with regulations like GDPR or HIPAA.
And there you have it. A secure Snowflake instance isn't about one magic setting. It's about building in layers of defense. You start with that solid foundation of users and roles. You layer on privileges and strong authentication. You protect it all with the walls of network policies. And you keep an eye on everything from the watchtower of governance. Every single layer works together to make the whole fortress stronger.
And that really brings us to the final question, doesn't it? Your fortress is built, the walls are high, you feel secure today. But security is never static. New threats pop up, your business changes, people come and go. So the real challenge isn't just building the fortress, it's maintaining it. How are you going to make sure your walls are just as strong tomorrow as they are today?